Although we must turn to the 17th century to understand the origins of modern French elegance and refinement, the 17th century did not start out very chic at all. What led the Madame de Rambouillet to quit the Louvre and set up her own alternate court in the Chambre Bleue, or Blue Bedroom? She was one of the most beautiful young women at court. She had a sparkling wit and enjoyed a very high status among the nobility. Why would she quit the spotlight? In January of 1609, she was 21 years old and asked, along with her two good friends, the Mademoiselle de Montmorency and Mademoiselle Paulet, to dance as nymphs in the famous Ballet de la Reine at Saint-Germain-en-Laye before King Henry IV. This was 2 reigns before Louis XIV. According to the records and the popular songs that were born from this event, the king acted quite brutishly, and his efforts to seduce the women were entirely lacking in elegance or tact. It was then that Madame de Rambouillet realized that due to the long and bloody wars of religion, which lasted from 1562 to 1598, life in France had taken on a brutal edge that needed a good filing down. The time was ripe for women to take the wheel. Once the religious wars had settled down, the nobility lost their ostensible role, which was the permanent exercise of arms. Without a war to give meaning to their status, their identity quickly crumbled. The walls to their cities were pulled down during the early 17th century, and the hated Prime Minister Richelieu even began to enforce the rule against dueling by attaching to it a death penalty. This was a catastrophe. The duel was an essential part of the nobleman's identity. It meant he could adjudicate his own affairs and that he was judicially independent of the king. Thus, the eradication of dueling meant the nobles were no longer sovereigns, but subject, along with their peasants, to the justice of the king. As an aside, dueling was not so easily erased, and in the 1960s even, the mayor of Marseille, Gaston Defferre, and a politician, René Ribière, dueled after the mayor insulted his colleague during an assembly meeting. The young Ribière challenged Defferre to a sword duel to take place the night before his wedding. Defferre promised not to kill him, only to ruin his wedding night. Indeed, Defferre struck Ribière twice before the referee called it. There is a video of it on the internet, if you don't believe me. And if you would like a further taste of the ever-troubled life of Marseille politics, I would recommend the Netflix series Marseille. Anyway, in the early 17th century, the French nobility was in search of itself. If they could no longer express their condition through valor, they would do it through their superior breeding. Lineage and bloodlines took preeminence over military victories, but blood was a lot quieter than war. It needed expression. Ever the mother of invention, this necessity for distinction gave birth to the rule of bienséance. I touched briefly on the idea of bienséance last week as the code of good decorum violated by Corneille's Le Cid, wherein the heroine Chimène did not reject the love of Rodrigue even after he killed her father. Despite the massive popular interest caused by this scene, the Académie Française ruled that it violated bienséance on the ground that it aroused the passions without directing them toward virtue. I gave this example again with the hope that it will help us down the road, for in fact, bienséance is a notoriously tricky term to translate and one that does not lend itself to straightforward definition in either French or English. Of course, as a weapon of the social elite, I think this charming vagueness was quite intentional. So let's break down bienséance into its parts. First, we have bien, or well, the adverb, not the noun, i.e. she sings well, elle chante bien, and the rather old verb soir, which means to be proper or fitting, to be becoming, to be well-suited. The combined form bienséance is not found in the dictionaries from the Middle Ages, but the adjective bienséant is, and it had two usages. In terms of things, a horse-drawn carriage, for example, could be bienséant if it was rigged up in a manner fitting the station of its occupants, the climate in which it drove, and the local taste of the people toward whom it would voyage. A person could likewise be bienséant if they occupied their social place as they should, such as a local priest would be in a subservient attitude toward a bishop, meaning he would dress more modestly, take a posture of greater humility, and always find himself behind his superiors at all times. Or another example, a servant who performed her duties quickly and quietly, and whose manner and dress fit the quality of the home in which she served, etc. The noun les bienséances did not appear until the 17th century, when the nobility was experiencing their identity crisis. Bienséance, in this sense, vaguely meant a code of refined manners that depended on many contextual factors, such as the person's identity or condition, i.e. were they a cobbler or a count, their age, sex, and other considerations, such as time and place. For the nobility, at least, these unwritten rules were more powerful than anything decreed by the king. However, it is important to note that bienséances were intended to protect and exude amusement, not authority. The nobles were fed up with the overreaching of the king's government, yet at the same time they had been made under Richelieu quite powerless against the monarchy. So the paradigm was switched from authority to amusement as a new realm in which to strike an important pose. So when Richelieu showed up at Madame de Rambouillet's house and leaned on her for information regarding a plot he suspected to be afoot in her chambre bleue, she coyly thanked him for his faith and her allegiance to the king, to whom she claimed to be entirely devoted, but lamented that she did not think she would make a very good spy. This was the new tone to be struck vis-à-vis the administration and with one another. The underlying moral values were more Catholic or Protestant than purely monarchical, and the prime social goal was levity and pleasure rather than valor and obedience.